Let's get on to main topic number one, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Jack Drees. And Jack Drees writes, I'm not a New Yorker, but I've read Andrew Cuomo, he's the governor of New York, recently reopened bowling alleys, museums, aquariums, and gyms, but there's no date on when cinemas should reopen. He recently talked about the risk of reopening them, but not about a time to reopen. Do you think cinemas in New York, the second largest market, will open up in time for Tenet this September? Probably not. After all, that is a main reason why cinema owners want to operate at this time. What are your thoughts? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, now listen, the era of the pandemic is, it's filled with hurdles. These are unprecedented times. Nobody alive today has really had to deal with these types of scenarios, and everybody's trying to figure it out as they go. New York, after this, is one of the most densely populated places in the world. Not the highest population, but one of the most densely populated. Has been hit very hard by the COVID-19. And for the most part, I think the way the New York government has been trying to manage it has been pretty admirable. However, for those of us in the movie world, and that's what we deal with on this show, how things affect the movie world, it is rather interesting that we are seeing certain things open in New York while movie theaters are not. This comes to us from the folks at Deadline who write, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo Monday gave gyms a green light to reopen, which is odd, but on August 24th, following recent nods to bowling alleys, museums, and malls, but is still leaving movie theaters, which he called less essential and higher risk, in the dark. That's both literally and figuratively. Cuomo gave no indication of a reopening timetable for the key market, which is making theater owners increasingly hot under the collar. I am unsure where the governor is getting his information, said Joseph Masher, Chief Operating Officer of Bowtie Cinemas and President of the National Association of Theater Owners of New York. So, yeah, here we are. They're opening all these other things, not movie theaters. Now, let me say this. I kind of have the same thoughts on this as I do with the Ezra Miller, Hartley Sawyer situation. John, how are these situations remotely similar? Well, follow me here. Like, Hartley Sawyer, of course, the guy from the Flash TV show who they very publicly fired when they rediscovered 7 and 8-year-old tweets that he had put out. Yet, when Ezra Miller's caught on camera laying hands on a woman, they did nothing. They didn't even address it. I said at the time about that situation, what I still believe is like, look, if you want to keep Hartley Sawyer in the show and just address the issue, I'm cool with that. Like, it's 7-year-old tweets, whatever you want to address and keep him on the show, I'm cool with that. If you feel like it really violates what your network is about and you want to fire him, okay, I'm cool with that too. Whichever you want to keep him, cool. If you want to fire him, cool. You want to keep Ezra Miller after he puts his hands on the throat of a woman? Okay. If you want to fire him, okay. Where I became really concerned and disappointed in Warner Brothers over that was the inconsistency. That's the part to me. It's the inconsistency. Like, really, 7-year-old tweets, you fire, publicly humiliate, and put out these big public statements. Guy puts hands on the throat of a woman, you don't even address it and pretend like it never happened. I'm cool if you want to fire both of them. I'm cool if you want to keep both of them, but just show some consistency. That's kind of my feelings here with this. Now, look, I've said before, Rob, that I'm totally cool with any government official who even makes decisions that I may not necessarily agree with if the motivation of the government is to try to protect its people. I'm all for that. I get that. And if they feel like they want to keep everything closed right now, I may not love that, but I understand it. If they feel like they have the safety protocols in place to open everything right now, I may or may not agree with that, but I understand it. This notion, though, this inconsistency of saying, well, theaters are less essential and they're higher risk, which I'll address that in a second. So we got to keep them closed. Okay, but you open bowling alleys and you open gyms and you open malls I don't have such a big problem with. Again, I'm cool if you want to open the mall. I'm cool if you want to close the mall. And I do believe there's a difference between certain things. For example, Rob, you and I talking about grocery stores, very essential. That's got to be open.
Yeah.
You got to have the proper safety procedures. Is a grocery store more essential than a movie theater? Hell yes, it is. Is it more essential than a bowling alley or a gym? Hell yes, they are. Absolutely 100%. But to call a bowling alley more essential than a movie theater is preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. Not to mention, to say that a bowling alley, or in particular, Rob, a gym, is less risk than a movie theater? Really? That's just inconsistent. Here, let's take a look at this for a second here. I specifically want to look at this risk thing for a moment. Let's look at this risk thing. Couple things to look at. Okay, are theaters higher risk than a gym? Well, let's look at a gym I love my gym, but let's look at that. A couple things that are very similar to each other. Number one, in a gym, everybody is constantly moving around. They're constantly moving around, rubbing shoulders, whatever. That's just constant motion in a gym. So everybody's always moving around and everybody's touching everything. Everybody's touching everything. That barbell you're about to pick up, 30 other people have picked up that barbell in the last half hour. Everybody's touching everything. On top of, everybody moving around, touching everything, you also get the whole situation of everybody in that place is sweating profusely. They're sweating and then touching everything. And because everybody's exercising, everybody's also heavy breathing, like gasping and panting and moving around and touching everything and sweating on everything and blah, 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 blah. So I'm not against the idea of opening a gym if you feel like you've got the proper safety procedures in place. Then I'm not against opening it. But it's laughable to me that you say a gym is less risk than a movie theater where essentially you're not breathing heavy, depending on the movie you're watching, am I right? You're not breathing heavy. You're not sweating profusely. You're not walking around touching everything. And other than coming into the theater, maybe standing in line in hopefully 6 feet apart for a concession and then sitting in your seat, you're not moving around constantly. To call a gym less risky than a theater is laughable. Again, you want to keep them both closed? That's cool. You want to open them back up? That's cool. To say that a theater is higher risk than a gym is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Then let's talk about the whole thing about what's more essential. You want to open bowling alleys? I'm cool with that. If you're opening theaters, you want to keep them both closed? I'm cool with that. But to propose that a bowling alley is more essential than a movie theater, again, is preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. Movie theaters are higher risk and less essential. Don't tell me that if you're going to open gyms and bowling alleys. If you want to keep them all closed, I have no problem with that, because then you're being consistent. You want to open them all up because you feel comfortable that you have the safety procedures in place to keep everybody relatively safe. Okay, I'm cool with that. But to keep one thing closed, and again, I am clearly biased for movie theaters. Obviously, I'm not trying to deny that, but still, to say one is a higher risk and less essential than the other stuff you are opening, it's asinine, Rob. It's absolutely asinine. It makes no sense. And again, like the Hartley Story, Ezra Miller thing, you want to do one thing? I'm cool. You want to do the other thing? I'm cool with that too. Just be consistent. That's all we're asking for, some consistency. Anyway, Rob, you've seen this thing. Again, overall, I think New York has done a pretty good job of trying to take really hard steps and very extreme steps at times to try to control this thing as best they can. I'm not sitting here criticizing them overall, but if we're talking about this one issue, it makes no sense to me. Rob, you see this. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, as you pointed out, I agree with you. In terms of gyms, also, they've talked about how COVID, the particles of virus can float on the air. When you're in the gym, you're breathing out heavily. Like, you're breathing deep. So whatever's inside of you is being pushed out into the air, and in addition to touching everything. And I'm just like, in a movie theater, unless you scream or you laugh, for the most part, you're breathing normally. You're socially distanced from people. You're not necessarily touching anything except the side of your chair. And I would think that movie theaters would be much safer than gymnasiums. And yet, Cuomo said that they were non-essential businesses. I mean, what about my personal well-being is very tied up in whether or not I can see Tenet. And I'm going to tell you, John, if I know that other people in the United States are able to go see Tenet, and me living in one of the great movie-going cities in the world, in Hollywood, and I can't see Christopher Nolan's latest, I'm going to get a little agitated. And I'm saying that me being agitated is going to make everyone in this house agitated, which in turn is going to make all the people they know agitated. So I would think that movie theaters are indeed essential. So they should open them up, damn it.
Hey, look, and listen, I cannot emphasize this enough, too, because I already can see that there are going to be people saying, oh, John, all I'm saying is I'm cool if they keep everything closed. If they feel that their state is in a certain situation right now, the state of affairs requires them to keep everything closed right now, I'm cool with that. Other than doctor's offices, grocery stores. I get it, because those things are more essential. Again, it's just the inconsistency that makes me go, wait a minute. Like, is Sony paying you guys off to try to keep theaters closed so they can keep strong-arming AMC? I mean, or Universal, whatever. I mean, that's just the part that bothers me as a movie fan. That's just the part that bothers me as a movie fan. Like where you and I live right now, Rob, things like gyms and stuff like that are still closed. So I get it. Like, okay, you're saying you think the risk is still too high in our state. Yeah, I wish my movie theater was open. But hey, if you're going to keep gyms closed and you're keeping all these other things closed too, I understand it. There's at least some consistency. So I don't know. The question for you guys is this. What do you think about this whole situation going on here with that? As a matter of fact, I decided to make that the topic of today's question of the day because I really wanted to hear what you guys had to say about this. And so let's go over and take a look at that right now. So the question of the day that we put up on the community tab on our YouTube channel, guys, by the way, guys, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel right now so you'll also be notified of the things we put up in the community tab. But I asked you guys this. And about 4,000 of you guys have already voted, and I just put this up like just before the show started. The governor of New York is keeping movie theaters closed right now, despite allowing gyms, bowling alleys, and malls to reopen, saying that theaters are less essential and higher risk. Do you agree that theaters are less essential and higher risk than gyms and bowling alleys are? Right now, 18% of you are saying yes. Because of certain factors, we believe that theaters are actually less essential and maybe even higher risk than things like bowling alleys and gyms. 82% of you right now seem to agree with me and Rob that no, theaters are not less essential or higher risk than bowling alleys and gyms. So that's where that's at right now, 82% to 18%. Question is, guys, what do you think about that? Do you think one is clearly definedly higher than the other? Maybe you think they should all be kept on the same field. Maybe you think they should be treated unequally. I don't know. What do you guys think? Are there some points here that maybe we're not thinking about right now? Some other factors we're not taking into consideration? Jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.